I didn't realise how big it was. It was really important because we've been coming over now as a company 2 or 3 years now to these conferences, and you need that amount of time to understand how it operates and who are the go-to people as well. And coming out as often as we have, we've made some good friends and acquaintances and what have you along the way. So it's a really interesting situation out here at the moment, and obviously going forward there's a World Cup coming, so it's not that far away actually. But soccer over here is improving.
And I think, Gary, we've been in the game a long time, you're into it, you're absorbed in your club, you're doing it, and you're on the treadmill because games come, next game comes, so on, and you're absorbed in all that, and sometimes you can get so absorbed in the running of it that the soccer, actually the development of that is hard to really develop it because you're every day working. And the same in clubs, sometimes you're focused so much on getting the result or getting that you need to sort of pull a little bit of time together and think, how can we improve? Because the potential for improving is huge. Yeah, it's huge.
Coach development, we're going to get into a bit of coach development. And again, I was listening to your interview on the plane, and you talked about when you got the message from Sir Alex about going to working with him, and you said it was a minefield, where managing up, managing down, and all those dynamics. And I was thinking back, that was at a time when coach education was in its infancy. How did you, with the level of intuition, how did you know how to manage all that without having the education around it?
Probably a lot of it is just your experience as a player. Fortunately, I had a good career as a player, but I started at the bottom and worked my way to ultimately what I considered the top, and achieved quite a good number of things. But then going into coaching is a completely different environment. But at the start, you think like a player, and you deliver sessions that you did as a player that you really enjoyed. But ultimately over a period of time, and that can be 3, 6, 12 months, maybe longer, you realise that there's a little bit more to think about than just the player. Now it's all about organisation, communication, how do we get the message across, because we have lots of things going on as coaches in our heads, but ultimately can we get that out there, and can people understand what you're trying to do, and do they want to do it? So there's a lot going on in a short space of time, but from my point of view, it was about gaining that respect from the players that I knew a little bit. I didn't know it all, but what I did know I could deliver on, and then we'll build it from there. And then you suddenly find out who you are as a coach, and how you're going to develop yourself amongst, sort of in my case, some good players, some really good players who wanted challenging, and they challenged you to challenge them. So it's a game that you're playing within the game, sort of thing, in order to get better.
You were asked to challenge the players every day.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, it was first of all, why me? Why do you choose me? And and I was sort of talking to Sir Alex about, well, how do you want me to do it? How do you want me to coach? And it was very simple, very simple. He said, "You're the coach, I'm the manager. You coach. Gain the respect of the players, but challenge them every day." So then you start to think about what does that mean? How do you challenge the players? Because you're dealing with players that are winners and want to win, and they want to win again, and serial winners, sort of thing. And I just took it from the point of view of, well, I've been here, I've played here, I understand a little bit about what it means to play here, to the supporters, to the people that work around the team, and I just embraced that. And I thought, well, challenging means challenging not just the players, but everybody around you to come up to another level. And that was important, to find a way to do that. And it wasn't successful all the time, but ultimately you know what's good and what's not so good. So you tend to veer towards the challenge of making every day special.
Reverse engineering that and going back then, challenging players at youth level, what did that look like? It's easy to see it when the class of 92 and used to call them Fergie's fledglings. I remember when I was a fan, when those young players were coming through. What does that look like, even with players that were Rashfords, the Pogbas, 5-10 years before they break through there? Paul, what does that environment, is that consistent down where those young players are challenged?
Yeah, I mean, when he first gave me the job, he told me I was doing the job. Sir Alex,
sounds about right.
27, 28, the centre of excellence, and at just that time, the rules changed. Before that, you could only have them hour a week. They didn't play for you. They weren't allowed to. They could only play at school until they were 16. And then they started with the Centre of Excellence first, and teams you could have. So at first it was 16, 18, then it would go down to 14, then it went down to 10. So eventually we were building a whole club within a club, a junior club. And of course now you've got to, like you say, coach development. So we picked a lot of guys who'd been at United before, but some others who'd been teachers and so on. But I remember one of the key things, and sometimes it's just a key thread, a key sort of idea that then really leads you to what, all the other bits. So Sir Alex he was obviously at high standards and so on, but one of the key things he said was our players have got to have no fear. No fear. We've got to play without fear. And to do that, we've got to accept the ball anywhere on the pitch. So from that, it leads you to, well, if we're going to do that, then they've all got to be good at mastery of the ball. So to be able to master the ball, we've got to have the right practice. So eventually we brought in Rennie Mullenstein, who had all the Corva stuff, which gave them a whole toolbox of things. But that leads you to, well, I've now got to master my opponent. So the skill side of it, those things come first. You know, you can have all your tactics and so on, but if you can't master your opponent, you can't get out of your own box, you can't get further up. So you had to start on those things. And then of course now, we've mastered our opponent, but to master it as a team, I have to be able to connect with my teammates. So now we've almost got our own secret code in language in terms of body language, timing of runs, runs behind, runs short, and so on. And all of that comes from just one idea of we must have no fear, we must be able to accept the ball wherever they are, and you must trust the teammates. So all of that, it all spreads off that, all the little details of it. But the core idea came from the manager of, well, we have no fear. And then you have people like Jim Ryan using the same language, so he'd call it the arrogance of timing. So we'll decide when we play, you know. So we won't just play fast all the time. We might slow it down. I'm going to try and do that on this summit, to try and show the arrogance of timing, to either draw people in and play and go, or to go at them and then just leave it to the last second to play. So that type of thing leads to it. And then Jim, again, you'd have sayings like, well, intimidation by skill. So that's leading you all a theme all the time to the players and coaches. That's what we've got to do.
And that's your toolbox, and that's your challenge in order to produce those moments, you know, for practice. But also you're creating your identity of who you are. It's yours. It's nobody else's. It's yours, you know, and not falling into the trap of we want to be like everybody else. Because ultimately you've got to be different. If you want to be challenging and you want to be winners, you have to be slightly different to the rest, you know, because that's the nature of the beast. So coach the way that you want it to be played, the way you want it seen, and the way you want to develop those kids to keep them. That's why you get classes of 92 and things like this. You get groups of, they're not there all year on year, but ultimately they're there because these are the programs you put in place and they're yours, you own them. So the club down the road, wherever it be, Liverpool, Man City around us, they're doing their own thing, but ultimately we've got something special that's ours. And I think that's really important to identify. From the
manager, that idea, you know, then comes the identity and so on, and then you've got the, you know, certain themes. So you say, well, we're following in footsteps. So we look at all the great players we've had: Bobby Charlton, Dennis Law, Duncan Edwards, Brian Robson, Ronaldo, George Best, all those. Well, we could actually say to them, well, you're training on the cliff. You are following in the same footsteps, the same pitch. Or if you play in the Youth Cup at Old Trafford, so you're building around your club, and you can do this with all your old clubs to set your own identity, depending on what it is. But you all make it seem like you belong to something then that's special, and that connects you on and off the field.
And you're going on a journey together, and then history comes, and you know you're building on things like that. And over a period of time, everybody knows why you're there. You know that before you go there. That's who they are, and this is what they want.
Again, coming from a fan, that was the fabric of the club was attack minded. What do you think that really looked like on a daily basis in terms of training? Like, was there intentional work around attacking, or was it just the players and the element of attitude of risk?
Risk was one thing, risk was there, but ultimately it was about bringing your best ability to the performance, you know, to the training every day. And we talk about challenging the players, but ultimately you were there for a reason, because you had something. You were chosen to be here, and what we wanted to work on was strengths. You've got a strength, I've got a strength, right, let's combine our strengths. There may be a couple of weaknesses in there, but ultimately I only want your strength. I want what you've got, so give me it as much as you possibly can. And then you build the jigsaw puzzle around somebody else's strength could be benefiting your weakness. But you'd mainly be pushing the boundaries of entertain, be as good as you possibly can be, express yourself. And Sir Alex was always, and go out and enjoy it, play with a smile on your face. I probably was one of them exponents of that, because I was always smiling. I was happy to be there, you know what I mean, every day. But ultimately, you know, release that tension and everything, because you're doing something that you want to do, and you want to do it well, and you want that crowd to be right behind you by showing your skills, because they want to be you. They literally want to be you when you're out on that field of play, and they would let you know when you weren't giving your best. Ultimately, you knew when you weren't performing well, but it was the challenge of wearing the shirt again, identity, you know, following in the footsteps. But the challenge was to take it to the next level, and to the next level after that, because behind the scenes, and certainly from my level as a player, but then as a coach, we had people like Paul underneath that who were challenging those kids to be the next group and the next group. So ultimately, as a player, you're looking over your shoulder all the time, because you just don't know when that kid is coming along to take your shirt. But that was the progress that was instilled in everybody, to push.
I think the really important thing here, Man United known for attacking. There's no doubt about that, and we did stress it. So, but we also stressed the fundamental bit about competing every day to make it hard for your opponent. So if we're in training and we want to practice attacking play, well, if the defending's no good, you're not stretched, you're not challenged. And I think this is something that comes now, that we've got to understand that these skills are relational. They relate to your opponent. So if we have mannequins and we have drills without opponents, or the opponents aren't competing well enough against you, the practice not good enough. So that was one thing at United, was that the training every day
was intense
with the first team, but also the same. Everything was really always high standard. You know, your standards are your stamp in a sense. So to practice good attacking play, then your defending play had to be really good as well. So I think we prided ourselves on that. And some people, you know, seeing from outside, some of the things we did with the young kids, we did 4 versus 4 games instead of 8 versus 8 and so on. And then they knew we played in the cage. So I remember being at a big conference for the Premier League, and then they put up what type of teams everybody was, their philosophy, and we were street football. You know, that's how we developed our players. And I thought, that's cheeky. That's really lack of understanding of what we're doing, because behind the scenes we were doing defending, we were doing tactical sessions, the whole thing. And if you want to get to that high level, then you must have the right level of defending. It's clear, you know. If you don't, you're not going to practice.
Yeah, I can remember never labelling sort of the topic you were doing, or the so it could be, say, possession. But within possession, there's no possession without being destructive. So get against. So if you're not in possession, how are you going to get the ball? You know, to be in possession. So there's an element of then the standards high, because you're either got the ball or you ain't got the ball. What are you going to do with it? You know, how are you going to get it back? So all that came out in one sort of training. The training environment was created like that. So to get one thing, you had to have the other. It wasn't just a straightforward, well, we're going to attack, right? Let's attack, let's come back, let's attack again. No, there's got to be opposition in order to stop that, because that's the game. That is the competition. It's me against you, it's us against them. And create that environment where the challenge is, how do I make that decision to beat you, then for us to beat them, and work through it, you know, and ultimately create a coaching session where you get it to flow by coaching quite a few things within one session. It doesn't have to be specific to that role or that model. So you create an environment where it's all in. It's literally all in. But these are the points I want to get across. If you want to keep possession, then we've got to suck people onto us, and we've got to play around them or through them. And how do we do that? But ultimately, how do we get them to come to try and get the ball off us? And what happens if we lose it all the time? How do we solve that problem? You know, then maybe it's the team that wins the ball all the time. No, I may be talking to them about possession now and how do we play. So you're coaching an holding situation. It's not just in a generalisation of we're doing crossing and finishing now. So all we're going to do is get the ball out, get it into a cross it. There's a lot more detail in there. We need to put opposition in there to stop the cross. We need to put opposition in there to stop the goal being as clear cut as it possibly can be. So create those environments where the challenge is, how do we solve the problem? Because that's what it is in competition.
Yeah. I think that's a really important point. I remember after a lot of people now, it's all about this moment of the game, this phase of the game, it's build the attack or create the attack, or it's low block or something. But the game's going on fluid anyway. And I remember at this point when I left Man United, had a really good relationship with Liverpool, really. The coaches at Liverpool, Alex and Thorpe, their academy manager, invited me in. Steve Highway's there, and we stood on the side watching coaching. He said, Steve Highway's like the old sage, he's a real expert, isn't he? And he said, one thing, Paul, at the moment, he said, I notice people want to do, they want to do just one part of the game. They've got their topic. They want to do a topic. Attack against defence, or it's build from the attack. And he said, but the whole game's going on, so you've got to teach them the whole game as it happens. And one of the key things for me that's been over is the way people describe the game. They'll go in possession, out possession, transition, and so on. And it gets me to the idea that no, actually, that you're not teaching the coaches to think properly there from the player's eye view, because you might be on the attack. Mick playing in midfield might be on the attack, playing it out to Kanchelskis on the wing. He backs up the play. Now, we're in possession, but is Mick more defending or attacking at that point? And he's got to be an option, but he might not be. He might be protection, so he might have to do one of both things. Now, as the ball gets crossed in, well, he's fully defending now because he's there in case they break out and he's going to win the ball back. Now, if they win the ball back, he's now... So you are in possession, but Mick's doing,
creating scenarios all the time.
80% defending, now he's 50%. So that's what you're trying to get over to the players. No, now read the game. Now what's your role at this moment? And you're forever in transition.
Yeah.
Whenever you play. So that's the sort of the names we give everything can actually make you just look at it in one way, but it's got to be more fluid to that. In terms of reading the game and so on, and to do that you do have to be looking, and it can be difficult because you're concentrating on one thing. That's why we might work together as a pair. So Mick's really working on the defenders, and that's going to make it a lot better for me, trying to attack them. So that dual coaching has a lot of potential as well, but you've both got to understand the role of what you're doing.
Brilliant. I love us player development, and again, United fan, read how many articles and interviews about the culture of practice and Cantona changing the culture of what he brought with the extra work. Is that legend? Is that what's your take on that there? I'm sure.
No, well, I was there as a player when he came in, and basically what Eric brought was a freshness to practice. It was already there, but it was like he polished it up a little bit. So there was moments with Eric when he was with the group, but then he'd go away on his own and do a little bit more. But ultimately the kids at that time and all the other players were doing a bit extra, but they weren't doing it in a way which looked sexy or looked because he's Frenchman and he's got that, that chest comes out and he's a peacock and everything, but he had moments where he could take himself away from the group and do his own thing. And I think what happened with that is a lot of the players reacted to that to think, well, I can do a bit of that. I can do some of that. And watching him and thinking, yeah, I'm going to stay behind and do a little bit more. If it's good enough for him, it's good enough. And it created this environment again and this sort of understanding of a little bit more is good. But I do that when nobody's watching. That's the important thing. It's what do you do when nobody's watching? That's the detail. That's the bit where you're actually taking it on again. And you're thinking about it. And again, Paul talked a little bit there about street football. What do kids, probably don't do it now, but you used to do? Take a ball, kick it against the wall. Practice those small little things, but ultimately practicing a bit of technique. The only thing that I had working was the wall. It's me and the wall. So I'm in my own little thing. And over a period of time, you're starting to manufacture things, you're starting to create skills, you're starting to create your own environment, and then you bring it into the group and into the team. And I think you talk about Eric had those moments where everybody thought, I could do a bit more of that, and did. And if everybody buys into a little bit more, suddenly you've got an overall, you've got what you've got, but you've got a bit of extra. And I think that was really important.
Yeah, I think he was an extra inspiration for that, but it was already going on.
Yeah.
But maybe what he brought was an extra, like, oh, look at the quality of that. Jeez, I hadn't thought of that, because he would keep it up, and then, poof, up high, and then down low, and then over his head, and there was something extra. But it was going on beforehand, but it probably brought it to a higher level. So when I was a player, after training, Mark Hughes and Clayton Blackmore would practice volleys and overhead kicks, and sometimes I would watch after training, and it was an entertainment on its own. You know what Mark Hughes likes for overhead kicks, but both of them. Clayton was the cleanest striker of the ball, scored goals from 25 yards. Both of them were unbelievably clean strikers of the ball, but also unbelievably gymnastic, athletic in overhead kicks and so on. And it was like, wow. Because I used to watch Hugo Sanchez on Satan Greaves and all that, and then it's like, and you've seen him score those goals back, didn't he? That one for Wales when he jumps up, and you were like, wow. But I used to do that with my dad on the field and so on. So talking about Eric, one time after training, I was only a young coach, 27, 28. He used to say amazing to me when he'd come in. And he did the same after training. He goes to me, I'm stood there, didn't know me from Adam, I'm like youth team. He goes, can you cross some balls for me? Yeah, no problem. So I go, luckily I could do it, I could play it. I wasn't a dummy, I could do it. And he'd say, headers, volleys, he'd say, now overhead kicks, and he's doing them all. And what was brilliant about it was, after 15 minutes, he goes, I'll come out there now, you come in the middle. And I'm the coach, it's like, you don't have to do that. But it was like two lads, he recognised like I could do it. And it was like two lads in the park. I call that the spirit of football. He had that spirit of that love of the game. But the other thing about the young lads was they were doing it way before he came. So the evening training was Monday and Thursdays, right? So for the schoolboys. So Beckham lived down the road. Gary either had to stay or go back home to Bury, come back. Then there was Chris Casper, there was Ben Thornley, about 5 or 6 of them would come. They'd train in the morning with Eric, they'd train in the afternoon, and they'd come back at the night. So this is their 3rd training session. Now, they didn't always join in everything. Sometimes they'd be just pinging balls on the side, but they'd join in the game at the end. That's what they wanted. So now you're talking about standards and so on, and following in footsteps. All the under 16s now, 14s, 15s, 16s, are now training with them. And it's Beckham, it's like...
Even a young Beckham,
It's fantastic. So that extra practice was already in them. They were already doing that sort of thing. And that then has a snowball effect on all the others. They see it happening.
They were absorbed in the moment, in that, obviously they probably had ambitions if we talk to them, that the ambitions of what they achieved, but ultimately it was all about the practice. It was about and being there, being around the football environment. That's the only thing they had on the mind. And I think it's the same for coaches. There is that moment when you dedicate yourself to something because you want to learn more detail. You don't want to learn sometimes the whole picture of 11v11 and how that operates, but you want to know the detail of how does that happen? Or do we just look at the end product? Because there's a lot going on before you get to the end product. So are you a detail guy that just goes, oh yeah, that happened because of that, or he needed that in order to get this? And now you start to think, how do I put a practice on that recreates all those things to get ultimately the end goal? The end goal, which could be a shot on goal, it could be a goal, but it could be a great pass, it could be a constructive movement, these types of things. But it's, as a coach, it's observing because you're really interested in the detail and not just the end product. So there's a journey to go on there a little bit of how do I get that information, how do I analyse that or see that, and how do I do it? How do I put that on? And that's a long journey you've got to go on in order to get there, because it's not just A to Z. It's a building block all the way through. And finding out who you are as well as a person and as a coach, because you're going to find out what level I can get to. And it may be that you're at the top level by taking the under 13s, taking the under 14s. Ultimately, you want to be the number 1 coach, but you might be satisfied with, no, I'm good at this. I'm good at getting to these under 15s. And after that, they'll move on to some, but preparation to get them there, hand them on, and you're the best at what you do. I think that's a soul-searching thing sometimes as well as a coach.
Well, there's also that the practice is the quality of the practice. So I've been at places where they give them 10 minutes before training, after training, and that, 4 of them together, they're keeping it up, but it's going off. They don't get enough touches. or they're kicking it, trying to hit the crossbar, the ball goes off or it goes in the net, now they've got to run and get it, so they don't get enough goals. So you've got to get the idea of what's the quality of the repetition, but also the idea of you must have an aim. Because if you don't have an aim, if you have a target, then you're not going to learn if you've got it right or wrong and what you should do to do it. So when I was about 14, I used to go everywhere with my dad watching games all over. So I was quite often in boardrooms with a lot of experienced football people at half time or after the game. So at half time in this game, it was at Stockport County, I was about 14, I was mad on football. And I didn't know at the time, but it was a guy called Peter Doherty who had played for Man City in the 40s, 50s, like the De Bruyne of that time, Irish international. He was the Northern Ireland manager in the 1958 World Cup, so he knows his stuff. You know, and he luckily he was nice. He started all talking, then he just turned to me, saw me there, and he tried to include me. And he said, "All right, son, do you want to be a footballer?" And I was like, "Oh yeah," like that. And he went, "Well, I've got one little bit of advice for you. Never kick a ball aimlessly." And I thought about it. It's like so bloody obvious, but it's the same in football. You know, you don't kick the ball just at the guy. You play to his right foot. You play to his left foot. What's the weight of the pass? Do you play in front of him? You know, what's the aim? So from whatever I was doing, I would do that. If it was against the wall, I was imagining there was someone there. And then I went to a club, a very good club for youth development, and they were hitting the boards before the training. So I was watching this kid, and I said, "Well, where are you aiming for?" And he said, "The boards." He said, "Yeah, I know that. What, like, whereabouts on the boards?" And he went, "I don't know, the middle." I said, "Well, it's not exact enough. Because if you want to practice, I'm going to hit that 10 times. You know, I'm going to try. Well, if I pull it to the left, I've got to know my run-up's different, or what corrections can I make? And also, if I'm playing Mick and we have a duel, we're aiming to hit that point. And that's what you want, accuracy. So then you get to your reading books. So I read all the football books, different ones. And it's Ian Wright. He said, at first at Palace, I was so overjoyed to get there from non-league. I'd take a bag of balls out, smacking it in the net. And then he said, I thought, oh no, I've got to be more, I hit the side netting. He said, and eventually I got to like, kind of hit the post and go in, and then kind of hit the post and come out. And then the other day I was watching
personal challenges there, aren't they?
So you challenge, it keeps it more interesting, but also you're getting accurate, and you know whether you know how to correct. And there was a video on the other day, and it's Maradona, and he's got a small crowd, people watching him. There's a goal, and it's surrounded by trees, training. He's got like 8 balls, and he hits the first one, bang, hits that post, the keeper dives. Then he goes, bang, he hits that post, and bang, he hits the post. And the keeper's diving each time, save it, and he hits it about 7 times. You're thinking, no. And then he goes the last one to hit the post, and the keeper comes out, and he chips it in over the keeper. And you go, that's the standard. So what I'd say is for kids who are really serious about it, go in training once, 2-3 times a week with your club, then go. That's not enough. You've got to practice at home, but then the coach's role is to give them quick tips like that. Right, how can you practice? How can you imagine that's going to happen in a game? What is it? You know, what's that situation? But you've always got to have a target and an aim. And that target might be, I'll give my left foot 4 head start because it's not as good. In my final, we'll play each other, or it'll be, and you just constantly. Maybe I'll go, that's my childhood growing up. That was me. Or get against the wall. All the bricks on the wall. Again,
it's creating that environment, but also then the player manipulating the situation to get better.
Yeah.
You know, by not being satisfied all the time with that repetition of I can do that, right? Well, but I can do this as well, and I can do this, and mastery of the ball. It's mastery of the
visualization is really important. That people don't really teach or so I honestly say, from a very young age, I thought about football every night in bed when I was mad, so I was always thinking about it. And I didn't realise people didn't do that until later on. What do you mean? I'm like, no, every night. Hugo Sanchez or so that imagination helps you practice for longer because it keeps you interested.
Keeps you engaged, doesn't it?
Keeps you engaged, and you've seen the ones with Bergkamp knocking the ball against the wall. He was captivated with the way it span, and so then years later he can spin that ball around the guy and go the other side. At Newcastle, that goal, he did it on purpose. He spun it round, and then he, because he's a master of spin, and really in lots of ways you've got to be, although you don't know it as a footballer, you're a physicist, you're a biomechanist, you're a scientist in that sense. So you've got to master spin. and the way the ball moves, so that you can recognise it in an instant that, oh, it's coming, but it's just spun a little bit more, so I'm going to have to...
It's mastering to get to the level you want to be at,
yeah,
because ultimately everybody wants to be successful at the highest level, but we all know that that's for a few, if you know what I mean. But there's still a level you can get at where you're master of that level, and then you're comfortable in that environment. And I think that's really important, to try and find that and not dismiss that as unsuccessful. You're successful to have gone from trying to control a football to actually now being part of something where you can control the ball, you can control the game, you can control the individual, the opponent, and these types of things at the level you want to get to. And that's important as a player and a coach, because that's understanding the game as to where you want to be and what is that detail. Because we are teachers, coaches are teachers at the end of the day, but ultimately we're there at the behest of the player. What is it they want? What is it they need? Two different things. What is it they want? What is it they need? And it's up to the coach to challenge themselves to bring that to the table at the grassroots level. Because I've always said this, you get those kids for moments in time that they've been doing other things, and I'm sure it's the same in America, in the US. There's a lot of things going on, but for that 1 hour, twice a week, 3 times a week, or the competition at the end of the week, that is their moment with you. So bring your best self to that moment, because that's what they expect from you. Don't bring all your bits and bats, because they're not interested in that. Why would they be? But you've got to be up for it, on it, and good at it. Be as good as you possibly can be to make it enjoyable and fun.
Ronaldo, who again legendary on his work ethic and mentality, but changed his game at United as well, from being a tricky winger to an out-and-out goal scorer. It looked like was what do you think was that down to, or what was that from inside working with him?
Well, ultimately Ronaldo from day one was, in his own head, he was the best player in the world. Even then, he was the best player in the world. He would quite openly tell you that, I'm good, I'm going to get better. And not only would he say, I'm the best player in the world, which we all knew he wasn't at the time, but you knew that he could be. And he knew that he could be as well. But ultimately, he put the work in. He put he had all the instruments at his disposal, both from the coaching staff, the club, and himself, and he wanted the best bits of everything. He just accumulated. He was like a sponge in a way. He'd openly look at things, try and challenge those things, take on board what he wanted, and dismiss the rest. He was very good at that, really good at that decision-making process of, I like that, I want to practice that to the upteenth attempt to get it right. If it worked in the game, keep it. If it didn't, gone, try something else. And I think that's the way he's progressed throughout his career. And it was challenging, don't get me wrong, but it was a great challenge for him, for us, in order to deliver all those other players around him who were all good, could all bring something to the table to make not only him better, but them better by having a Ronaldo in the team as well. So it worked both ways. But you're right, he came in and Ronaldo had his ball and the team had their ball at one point. So now what is your job as a coach? Well, it's to integrate him into the team. And the team can help you with that, the players can help you with that, but ultimately it's like, hey, come on, Cristiano, you can pass the ball now and again. You don't have to dribble it. We know you're good at dribbling, but can you pass it to me for a change? So those types of things you would try and set up, basic stuff, and he was receptive to all that. And he understood the game, even though, he's a top guy, top player, still. But he understood that he couldn't do it without a team around him, and he used those players and they used him to get exactly what they wanted out of the competition, which was ultimately to win. But they needed moments of brilliance. Ronaldo had that. But, Ronaldo needed the consistency of performance within the team in order to give him the moment to be the match winner. And that was all part of the jigsaw puzzle, really. And it sometimes that's not coaching, that's just creating, again, the environment and the group of people that are all locked into the same sort of understanding of what they want to do and how they want to do it. And you get a little bit of luck along the way, and good people behind them, team behind the team, the management, the manager, that drive, that resilience and all that, creating all that. It's something you look back on, because at the time you're in it and you don't you know, you see little elements of the building up and there's something special going on, but it's only until you come away from it that you realise, wow, that was good, that was decent, you know what I mean? That was enjoyable, and wow, we went on such a ride that was second to none. And how do you repeat that? Because you want to do it again as a coach, you want to do it with other players, but ultimately you get a moment in time when everything is just so on, you know, and it's red hot and it's working, and it's the ups and downs, you know, losing a game is like, wow, we don't lose games. Luckily we didn't lose many, but we were always striving to win the next one. How do we do that, and what challenge does that bring in order to do it? And you need the right players with the right mentality and the right coaching and the right management in order to give you that opportunity to go on that brilliant journey.
I like I read quite a bit on the ecological dynamics with Keith Davids, Caravaggio, I think it is, and so on, and they changed the term from skill acquisition, where you're acquiring a model of how to dribble or what have you, like Ronaldo, to skill adaptation. And to me, that's the biggest way to describe Ronaldo's career. He's adapted to each situation. So he came in, I didn't like him at first, he's all these tricks, and he was overdoing it, really, wasn't he? He was overdoing it, he wasn't as direct as he could be, couldn't he? But he adapted. Now, a big part of you say it's not coaching, but it is, because the players were smashing him in training, because they weren't having that. And the coaching was, well, we'll let them do it. That was the coaching. Yeah. So you've created the environment where, well, we'll let them do it, and he'll have to learn, because he's not liking that, and he adapted his game to be more direct now. So he couldn't, because he would get smashed in England, and now he became the goal scorer and so on. So he adapted. So that idea of skill acquisition, you just acquire them. No, it's got to be adapted to the opposition. Again, we're going back like we talked about before. If your training is not good enough, if the Man United training hadn't been, he probably could have carried on as he was, but they weren't going to let him do that. So that would be a big point for the coaches. How do you adapt? You know, and it might well be it's not through sheer coaching, it's through creating everybody else more competitive to make that come out. And then he adapted again because he lost pace, and now he's in his movement in the box, so he's obviously watching players and so on. And he's the greatest adapter we've seen in modern times, to think of the player he was to where he became. But then we've had others, great ones like you had John Barnes, was unbelievable, fast, and then he became more of an inside midfield player when he'd had his injuries. Giggsy at the end adapted. With Giggsy, they said, because we had a specialist, didn't we? She did the eye test and everything. And so
Gail
when he was on the left, his peripheral vision on that side, because he didn't need to look that way.
Because all he had was a crowd down the left-hand side.
But when he moved in the middle,
inside.
It improved. So that's it again, skill adaptation. For even a top player at the late in his career, he could adapt. And he was phenomenal, wasn't he, in midfield? Because every now and again he'd run with it.
Yeah.
And that was, so there's another, years go by, the people you learn from. So Carlos Queiroz was at United, and luckily I'd get, my best conversations with him were in the changing room. He was maybe working late and I'd started doing it. And then this time he remembered talking to me about the Portuguese. So he was in charge of all the Portuguese youth, then the national team. And he said, we had loads of ball-playing midfield players. He said, but they were all the same.
Yeah, they were like Quaresma and Ronaldo.
And he said, so we started in the youth teams to experiment with playing a winger in midfield, because the other player he's playing against is also a midfield player. He's probably not the quickest. So now you've got this winger running at them, and now there's adaptation.
So creating that 1v1.
There's the adaptation. You've noticed something, and that goes back now to, like they're all saying with Arsenal, they don't attack through the middle, they only attack through the wings. So maybe they've not got an Iniesta running at them, or they might add something in like that.
But again, that goes back to that
skill adaptation.
That why midfield players pass, move. But then you throw a little spanner in there where it's not a pass now. I'm going to beat you 1v1. I'm going to dribble past you. Anderson in midfield. So I'm taking you on now. So now it's not just a pass and a run. Now it's me against you. And that's a skill that maybe have been acquired in a different position, but you've brought it into a different dynamic now. And that's taking it to another level. But ultimately, that is the challenge that you put them. Gary Neville was one, centre back. Centre back, really decent centre back, probably over a period of time small in height to make it to the level he ends up a full back. how many caps for England as a fullback, but ultimately use the same defensive qualities as a fullback, but now adapted to be able to go forward, because he didn't do that as a centre-back. Now he's going down and supporting David Beckham, not necessarily running beyond David Beckham, but certainly supporting from behind. So now, again, adaptation, and that's ultimately what you're looking for. Are players adaptable, not just to be certain players who play certain positions and it's rigid. There is a bit of that, but ultimately there's got to be 3 or 4 in there that are quite open to the fact that they could play here, they can play there, and they can keep the same level and standard for maybe 2 or 3 games and then back to where you are. But it gives you great options to change the course of a football match.
I think people profile. Everybody's got player profiles. Everybody's got the philosophy. Everybody's got the game plan. Everybody's got player profiles, and then you get your midfield player does this and that, and then you go, oh, yeah. I think Gary always said, well, yeah, but we had Iniesta and Messi running at people, the centre halves in the middle. And now the centre half's got something to do. He's got to come out. Now that leaves a space, and it's devastating. Someone running with the ball from the midfield. But it's a profile. It was one of the clubs I went to watch. They had a profile or their philosophy, and they'd said, well, we want to change from a sort of up and at them team to more possession based. So a lot of the time they'd be looking on the side with the analysts and go, well, we've got 55% possession. I go, yeah, but you're 2-0 down. It's like, and then there was one game that was really stark because they were playing 3 at the back, wing backs. So he goes out to the wing back. He's just on the edge of the final third. He looks up for a pass. And probably in his back of his mind, he's thinking, well, we have to keep possession because we want our possession numbers, and he passes it back. He had 20 yards. He could have run with it, but he's in his mind. He can't see that. So that he's programmed that this is what. So this is a big, big emphasis for coaches that they should be. No, everybody should see that I can run with it, and I can play a 1-2, or I can play another.
The opportunity in it.
Yeah.
Find the opportunity to hurt the opposition or to hurt the player you're playing against. In a skill way, and then having the tools to be able to make that conscious decision, because that's your bit, that's what you're bringing to the game, and then accept I've made that decision, and the consequences of that decision are me. They're on me. And there are elements to conforming and getting it right from a base point of view, but ultimately then it's got to be, hey, what have you got to change the course of the game? And are you capable in taking on that responsibility to change the course of the game and going, yeah, I got that one wrong, but I got others right? And are you a coach good enough to be able to accept that? Or is it, no, this is the way we do it. You do this and you don't play unless you do this. I don't come from that background. I don't think Paul comes from that, because we have to find a way, or we have to as coaches, but the players have to. But we have to give them the responsibility to make that choice.
I think one of the problems is it just becomes like general speak. Everybody follows this, and then that's what we do. So we call it possession. Well, that's not really what we're trying to do in my book. We were always like trying to advance. So if you're in possession, if you can't go directly forward, then you've got a play around ring. Starts with the goalkeeper at the back, you play around there, but you're always in that play around ring, you're searching. It's a search. Now you should be searching for the most dangerous pass possible. So if that's to the centre forward over the top, you should look for that first. But a lot of people think, well, we're building up from here, so we've got to pass to the 6, who passes to the 2. But no, so they should be looking for that one first, and then know that one's on. So that stops a lot of in this idea of possession. No, it should be circulate. So that would have helped the wing back. So he circulate, and can you pass it? No. If you can't pass it, can you combine? No, can't do that. But I've got space to run with it. Well, run with it. So you're looking for the answer, so. All
right, last couple for you. This has been amazing. Mick, adaptation, obviously a big part. Talk about players adapting, but coaches as well adapting your journey. Working with different managers, supporting different managers. So a lot of coaches at the youth levels are going to be managing down, managing up, working with different staff members, supporting, working with even just 3 come to my head with Ferguson, Ole, and recently with Wayne Rooney. How much do you kind of have to change your personality or adapt when you're dealing with different people?
I don't think you change your personality and your character. I think you take that with you, because that's who you are. I'm a big believer in you are who you are. You don't be somebody you're not. you know, because I think that's pretty shallow, and I think you get found out that way. If you try to be somebody that you're not, then everybody sees through it, you know. But I think you take that with you everywhere. What you do learn is what is it specifically that they want from you, because you're there, you know. And what is your strength? What is your strength? Is it your delivery? Is it your coaching methodology? Is it just you being you? Or is it something that you're reinforcing because there's not necessarily similarities with the people you're working with? There's a slight difference, a clash, but it's a healthy one. It's a good one. So you don't. I mean, me working with sort of Sir Alex is like the ultimate in a way. Why me? Well, you know, I played there, I coached there, and then I became his assistant. And I often ask that. I never even asked him the question, well, why me? Why did you choose me? But he did. So ultimately, when I was there, I wanted to be the best I could be for him and Manchester United. Then you go and you work with Ollie, who's I coached when Ollie was playing, you know. So now I understand what Ollie brings to the table, but not as a manager. I didn't know what he was as a manager, but ultimately he wanted me in there because of my strengths of knowing Manchester United and what it takes and who it does, and then ultimately growing to get to know him. Wayne Rooney was a different one, because Wayne, I didn't realise how good Wayne was until I actually did 2 weeks with him at Plymouth, because I just thought, well, Wayne Rooney doesn't need this. He's a great footballer, outstanding footballer, lived the life to the full, but now he's a manager and he's in charge of a group of people. Now, what am I going to bring to that? I'm going to bring myself. I'm going to bring my experience. I'm going to look at Wayne in a different light. And he surprised me. He really surprised me with his knowledge, the way he conducted himself, and also around the players. He wasn't the big I am. He was a player trying to get his message across to a group of players that were on that pathway. And you know, I thought he got short shrift. I thought Ollie got short shrift as well. But I probably would say that because I was working with them. But what they had was energy, enthusiasm. Why are they doing this? Why have they asked me to go along with them? I can't answer that question. They can, probably. But it was great to find out what you possibly knew, but didn't actually know the whole thing until you're actually alongside them. Because it is, you know, there's a difference. There's a leader, there's a manager, there's a coach, there's a big difference. You know, and ultimately I learned things even with Sir Alex when I became assistant manager, and he was doing things when I was a player that I was like, wow, where's that one come from? Or why is he doing that? When I went assistant 15 years later, it's like, now I understand it. I get the picture now. I understand why he did that in my time as a player and why he's doing it now as a manager. And I'm the coach alongside that. So there's that moment when it all seems to come together and you realise this is what I do, this is what he does, and this is what ultimately the manager does, and where you fit into that jigsaw puzzle. And once you realise that, life's a little bit easier, because you can dictate to the level you want to. You're involved in decision making as a player, as a coach, and then as an assistant manager, you're now acting for the whole club in a way. And it's important then, the decisions get bigger and they carry a little bit more weight, you know, than being a player who just has to turn up, make sure you get up and train and rest, recover, play. All these. Now you're starting to, wow, there's a big international football club around this, and ultimately what I do reflects on everything. And then the manager is the big decision maker. So yeah, all those, I mean, I work with Steve Bruce, and fantastic. All bringing different qualities, different understandings of the game. And I work with a lot of others who've all added to my learning as well. You know, and hopefully they've picked up one or two things of me being me, kind of thing. You know, because I'm not a great talker as a coach. I know what I want. I get the message out there and I simplify it as best I can, but look for the detail to make it better and then hand it over. It's one of them. Go on, have it. What do you want to do with it? And take it from there. And then that's when you build on something. So it's not directed. And even as a company, MP Coaching, we're not coming across as this is the way to do it. But we are here to say there are a lot of things in there that you could go a little bit more into detail, a little bit more emphasis on why these things happen, and the practices are there, and how do you put that into your sessions? How do you put that into your football environment, your club, you know, at the grassroots level? You know, because there's a lot going on there. There's a hell of a lot going on there, but ultimately it's bit by bit by bit. Because it's not the be-all and end-all at grassroots level to say, well, you know, I'm only here for 2 months, 3 months. It's not the professional game. I'm here for a period of time, which could be 1 year or 15 years or longer, because most grassroots clubs start, well, coaches start out because their son or daughter plays. So I'll volunteer. But then suddenly that lasts for 10 years, and 10 years I've been doing this now, and all the issues that come with that. But suddenly you're now into your football, into the coaching bit, and you do want to add a little bit more. I'm sure you do if you want to progress it. So it's a really interesting journey to get into, but ultimately, from our point of view as coaches, doing what we're doing and being at these conferences and applying ourselves to clubs over in this country, it's what do you want? What can we give to back your coaches, back your players, and then let's come back and see if it's progressed. And don't just leave it as a one-off sort of thing. We want to be part of the family sort of thing for a period of time. And at the clubs that we are working with now in the US, on the East Coast, the West Coast, and in the middle, it's a huge country this, we're getting those messages across, and it's a really interesting time.
I think there's a big opportunity for improvement at all levels of the game now. That at the top level is multidisciplinary teams, the amount of staff involved. That's in England academies, a whole load to every age group. In the big clubs over here, you've got how many teams, you've got to get them all on the same wavelength, all pulling together. So very important, the idea that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts in a complex system. Otherwise they're all just doing their own thing. When you add it together, it's not as powerful as it should be. And I think that's a big thing definitely in English academies now, because you've had silos, you've had the sports science, psychology, welfare, the coaching, it's all different. Now the big thing is to bring them all together. And I think this is, when it comes down to it, you want to bring them together around the football. How does that work? How do we do it? How does the work you do in the gym affect the work you do on the pitch? How does the psychology work? How does the coaching? How do you do it all together? And that's why I think it does help to provide a process for people to look at the game in the same way. So that's what we've done with the under the microscope idea, that will give you, because you can't coach what you don't see. So we need to attune your attention to the key bits. So one bit is to look at the duel. So a lot of the time, you know, if you're using a mannequin or you're not, no opponent there, well, it's how do I play relevant to you on and off the ball? How do I gain advantage? So that would be the starting point, and we've got certain mechanism for that, for looking under to this quadrant to do it, but then also zooming in and saying, well, okay, positionally, how do you get an advantage? Body orientation, have you got your back to goal, side to goal? Then it's in scanning, because if you don't scan, how can you what you're going to do next? Then it's movement, changing the speed, changing the direction, so on. Now that's where obviously the physical people have got to know that. So instead of just running through cones and doing all sorts of athletic training, it's got to relate to the duel and how do you win it. So that's really important, to have that perception, all look through the same. So whatever you're doing in the warm-up or in the gym has got to reflect. Now you start to say, well, okay, this kid needs heading, needs to improve at heading. Well, I'll improve the technique. Can you improve his jumping? And we'll bring it all together. And then you start to work like that. And then we're looking at deception. So, you know, in lots of ways, you know, you can have as many speed tests as you like, but the players on the pitch are the ones who read the game. So, and it might well be that they bring you here to then go there. So I'm going to beat you in that deception, you know, and then it's timing and techniques. So all of that sort of comes together. And I think if you've got a group of people looking through the same lens, then they will. So I might have a sports scientist who can give me a tip because I've not looked at it in that way before. Or even if I've had a striker or a defender, and the defender can give you a tip, or the goalkeeper, because you're looking through the same lens. And that's a big part of the work. Obviously that takes a bit of time. You need, like Mick said, you need a series of events to try and bring that together. But it means you're all working together, and then it's back to that, oh, well, we all belong, we've got our identity, we're all looking at it in this way. And then the biggest motivation is progress. You've got a way of looking at that to see, well, does he get better at coming short to go long? Oh, we're all looking at the same thing now. And what's his acceleration and deceleration, and acceleration again to beat the guy, and what's the timing like? So that's it is complex, but you're trying to attune people's focus to what really matters in the game. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's a process, and that's kind of we'll wrap it up. It's a process, but what I love about what you're both, well, the level of experience and the level of passion jumps out every time you speak, but the level of not hiding under the fact that it takes a love of the game.
Yeah.
Looking at it.
We're big believers in getting on the grass or the artificial now, isn't it? But get out there, make mistakes and learn from those mistakes, and ultimately get your message across. And how do you do that? And it's a level of discovery, personal discovery as well for yourself, because there's loads. All supporters are coaches in their own heads because they see the game. But ultimately, can you translate what's going on, and can you put it down onto the grass and say, these are the specifics to get this? Can you see that? Can you do that? And I think it's a really important thing in grassroots now, is not just to have a ball, it's how do you manipulate the ball? How do you get from A to B? How do you create an opportunity? And like Paul, you could tell Paul's pretty enthusiastic about everything, about the bits that are the minute, the detail in the outcome is massively. We only look at the outcome now because we live in a world of outcomes, don't we? We live in a world of, let's just see the ball at the back of the net, let's just see that wonderful bit of skill, let's just see, or how many kids now watch a game of football? Not many. How many coaches do? Not many, probably. We watch bits because we're given bits, we're fed bits all the time. So now, what is the detail in the bit that you're seeing? And can you see it? And then can you find a way of practicing that, or putting on a little session that gets you the end product? And you'll be amazed once you look at it how many things are happening in one moment in football to get the end product. There's loads and that there could be 8, 10, 12 topics in one movement that you could actually practice. And it takes time, it's repetitive and it's time. And that's just one thing that you've seen. There's millions of things that you see in a game of football. And also, we all see them differently sometimes. Yeah. And that's the beauty of the game, is well, I see this and you see that. And also as young coaches, or certainly coaches in clubs, how often do we get together as coaches and talk football, talk soccer? Or do we just talk about my team? No. Sit down, have a cup of coffee, let's talk about this situation. Because ultimately in grassroots football, certainly even professional, but grassroots, we're all trying to do more or less the same thing, which is get involved and learn and get better. But we're actually at our own clubs, so we stay at our own clubs. We don't open up to the club down the road or the coach down the road because we want to beat them. But really, you're beating yourself up because there's a lot going on and we're all experiencing the same things. Some have got to a higher level, but some are at a good level. Some are at the lowest level. But if you communicate and talk and get really passionate about it by getting in the room, Paul has a good saying, get in the room. If you're not in the room, you're not there.
Or get on the pitch.
Or get on the pitch.
Because recently, I've started to do more where the coaches are playing or they're using handball. So the reason I do that, and I spoke to you before about Lynn Almond, Games for Understanding, teaching Games for Understanding. It was Thorpe and Bunker when I was at Loughborough University, and the same principles apply. Simplify the game. So instead of 11v11, let's make it 5v5. And what I did recently, you modify the game, you simplify it, then you exaggerate it by making it a little bit bigger so that it's clearer when they're playing the pictures, and then you modify it so that we didn't use our feet because there were different levels of skill and different age levels with the coaches, so they used the hands. So it's handball, and now we go into outwitting off the ball. So can they make a sharp movement to get the ball? Can they make a run behind? Can they make a run across? But it's eye contact. It's given a clear picture, a clear signal. You have to give a clear signal you want it, and by a change of speed, or and also a clear way to get away from your marker. So we did all of that in handball, and I would say that's a better way, because you can do a whole demonstration. You can have a load of coaches on the side, you can put them in groups, and you talk to them, and they give you the right answer, but you don't know if they've really got it until you see them from the player's eye view. Can they show you themselves what it is? And then that in itself can be part of your club philosophy, part of your method, that you say, come on, let's just take a ball out here, even in a hallway or something. Right, show me what happened there with the forward. I'm doing it all the time with Mick, and that we show some clips. Oh, look at the way he scored that goal at the weekend. You know, he came inside and went through the player's legs. Now that's a common way to score. Ollie was good at that. So in itself, you're asking the coaches to get in the room with themselves and the game and discuss it, but also show it. Yeah, this is what he did. You know, and that's been really, I think, successful recently. And the only thing with that is you need to go to the next one to show the progression.
Yeah, those are our key messages as a company now.
Yeah.
Definitely that we can definitely put something together, but then we want to follow it through, hand it over, have a go at it, and then we're available for discussion, or available to be able to say that didn't quite work. Okay, fine. That sometimes happens. What did you get out of it? Can we take it? Oh, we've got all that now. What's the next bit? What's the next bit? What's the next bit? And that only happens over a period of time. But you have to be in the room and available to give that. And whoever wants it, it's available.
They're saying like the most important thing is feedback. And people think then you're giving feedback to the player. The most important thing is the feedback the player gives to you by performing in that game. So if you've made it clear, the game, this is where Eric Harrison was a coach for us, everything he did in training happened in the game. Oh, bloody hell, he's a genius. But so if you make it simplification, so I did it 4v4 with a diamond, quite a big pitch, and now I can see if that coach has understood that game. So I'm getting the feedback by what he's actually doing. Now that's really important. That's the best feedback, that you create a game that provides the feedback that you're getting it right. You know,
it strengthens the methodology behind it all. You know.
And that's why it takes a couple of days. It takes, well, your visits are 2-3 days, right? You're not just going in and doing a session.
No.
It's too big a country to come for a day, you know what I mean? You've got to settle into it, and you've got to do the travelling a little bit.
You might demo what you do start, but then you need to see them do it. You need to see, has the penny dropped? Have they got the idea of it? Yeah. So yeah, and you can do that over video. You know, people can do it on their own training. You discuss it over video, and that's why it's good. Those type of things are good. Yeah.
Brilliant. All right, fan question to finish up. Mick, best player you played against in your playing days?
Oh, best player I played against. Well, one of the biggest lessons I learned as a player was against a player called Paulo Futre when I was younger. Wow, he was like a box of frogs, him. You know, he could do things that I'd never really understood or believed that those things could happen. But that was like going from sort of your British side of the game to then Europe, and just seeing how special these moments were. So yeah, he gave me a lesson now and again. But those are the things that some of the best players I've ever played with and against have been pretty simple footballers, you know, in the way they execute, the way they play. So, you know, I've played with some top. Brian Robson was a top player, good at everything, but meticulous, enjoyed the challenge. And then there's other players that you play against, like I say, you know, who take you for a ride now and again, you know, because you don't expect, you know, that they're capable of doing these things. And it's remarkable, the game of football, really, that where it takes you and how you experience highs and lows in seconds as a coach and as a player. Because these things just happen and you go, wow, where did that come from? Didn't even know that existed, or that they could do that sort of thing. So there are special moments that you reflect on and you savor later on. At the time, it's annoying because you're either embarrassed or you're not. You know what I mean? But I think that's the beauty of the game. We all see it through a different lens, and we all want to achieve different things. And we all ultimately have to put the work in and the practice to understand exactly that it's not just about kicking a ball around. You know, there's more technique in there. There's more thought process. There's more application. And there's resilience. There's all those words that you talked about before. We were in a bookshop in Portland yesterday for about 4 hours, the biggest bookshop in probably America, maybe even in the world. And we're sitting there and we're looking at all these books and we don't know where to start with them. But ultimately, you could spend a lifetime in there. We sit down, we have numerous amounts of tea and coffee, and we start talking about the game. But ultimately, all those people in that bookshop are there for one reason, which is to find the book that takes them to the next place. And there's loads of books. You said it yourself. How many mindfulness books are there and technical books and all that, and it's trying to find a way through all them to find the one that really resonates with you, because there's loads of them. There's loads of leadership books, but unless you've tried to lead, you don't know what that feels like. It's just a book. You know what I mean? So get out there and get on with it and put yourself in that position of embarrassment sometimes. You know, and players do that. Players embarrass you. I've had loads of embarrassing moments, but ultimately I'm here to tell the tale.
Paul, anyone at 10 years of age who you said, that's definitely a Man United first team player?
Never.
Never?
Never. There's never one. You couldn't do it. There's no way you could do this. So it's such a complex system, the family, the this, the that, so you wouldn't. You could saw Rashford, that he gives a nice move, but what will he end up like? No. You start to see it a bit further on. Norman Whiteside played with and against him, you know, in training, what have you, when he was 15. It was like, wow, he's a beast. And he was such a skillful player as well, Norman.
Yeah,
you know,
I played against him when he was 15.
He was incredible. When we're talking about playing against Norman in training, and these things that stick in your mind, because he played in the World Cup then, he's the youngest ever player. He's a hero of mine. He's like, and I loved him. He was a great guy as well. He is a great guy. So the ball is in training. It went right up in the air from a clearance, from a corner, and he stood on the edge of his own box, or in the D, in his own box, and I'm coming from behind him, and I'm thinking, it's Norman Whiteside, he's built like a big shit. It's like, but he's known to be physical as well. I thought, I'm going to make a name for myself. I'm in the reserves, we're going to come in. When he takes a touch, I'm going to take everything, you know, I'm going to do him in. So I'm rushing in like this. And what he did, he trapped it on the half volley, gone 20 foot in the air, he trapped it with the outside of his left foot on half volley. I'm still running that way, he ran that way. By the time I turned, he was in the centre circle. And I was like, wow, that's another level completely. And that's years later, I spoke to him about it. I said, I never even seen a look or anything. And he said, well, that's the thing about it. He said, you don't need a big look. He said, if you're on the half turn anyway, you only need a quarter look. So that also goes into the next levels of like scanning and hiding your scan. Or what Jim Ryan used to do sometimes is he used to look so the defender would see him, and then he would play it that way. You know, so they're level upon level, aren't they? But to play with or against those top players, I mean, even after I finished, I played against Asa Hartford. Played for Scotland in midfield, and he had every trick in the book in midfield. You know, you get it from a throw and you're closing down. You play it off first time. Next time you'd stay off him a bit, and he'd take a touch. He'd wait for you to do. Then he'd play it, and he'd get it off the centre forward. Next one he plays it round the corner. Next one you go to stop that, he lets it run across his body. So that's a bit of all that experience of playing against those people was how I came up against this. I wouldn't call it a model, but it's a way of looking at the different options, depending on where the defender is and so on. It's not a model because it could be adapted all the time, but there's certain principles in it that can help players.
Predictability, unpredictability, players, all those sorts of things.
Well, the thing I always say this one, we can come up to it because you realise that after a bit you think, wow, that's So if I say to you, we've got these kids in all these clubs in America or whatever, and we can double their technical options straight away, and you go, yeah, I suppose so. But if you can teach them disguise, you've just doubled everything they do, because I can play like that or I can let it run. So, you know, I can look that way and then play the pass in behind there. So if you encourage and teach disguise, which Jim again said it was great. I think it's the best description of it. It's small, late movements, because even on a coaching course I had a lad say, well, I thought you had to exaggerate it. I said, no, it's got to look exactly like that same pass until the very last moment, and that's, you get them to commit themselves, and then you play the pass, don't you? And imagine that if you could do that with kids. But I think it's just an idea that you can give to coaches to experiment with, and then you can build that in. But like, yeah, you've just doubled it. I wish someone had told me that when they were teaching us to play two touch all the time.
Oh yeah, pass move.
Two touch all the time.
Stand still sometimes.
Why not hold it a bit
longer?
Hold
the ball a bit longer, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's where Jim's one came, the arrogance of timing. Well, you come to me.
Yeah.
And now I'll play it when I'm ready again and go to run against your flow. So like you said, there's so many things, but if one at a time you just drip feed some of these ideas in, then you're better.
Yeah, and then they take ownership of it and they'll practice it further and develop.
We had
They'll develop it.
Big one in England, ball speed. So it's pass it fast all the time. That's what they meant. But no, sometimes you have to pass it slower or wait till the guy comes and then play it. You know. So yeah, there's all those things. Yeah.
Brilliant. Guys, outstanding. I've loved this. We'll let you go to the NBA game. It's nearly night time. Thanks so much.